Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So last week I did a video for the Blood Hunter from Critical Role. And as I mentioned in that video, I thought the Blood Hunter was a reasonably well-balanced class. I think it gives us some options that no other class gives us, and I would say if I was to compare it to other martial classes, it would end up somewhere in the middle. The thing about new classes, though, is that they present new opportunities. And since I've been working on Cleric videos, I thought this was a perfect time to do a build video where we look at how we might use the Blood Hunter in combination with Cleric to make a pretty effective character. So if we look at the base campaign world for Dungeons & Dragons, that's the Forgotten Realms. And one of the gods of the Forgotten Realms is Talos. And in previous editions, there had been a prestige class for Talos called the Stormlord. Now, the way the Stormlord worked is it was a cleric prestige class. And if we look at this prestige class, what it would do, basically, is, number one, if you were wielding a spear, it would get a bonus to electricity damage or lightning damage. And then later on, that spear would get a bonus to sonic damage or thunder damage. Now, with the Blood Hunter, as it is presented in 5th edition now, I see an opportunity for us to make a very similar kind of character that would be effective in 5th edition. So I'm going to show you how that would work now. This is the Stormlord. So we're on D&D Beyond here. This is going to be an 11 level build. This will not be Adventure League legal because Blood Hunter is technically a third-party source. If Blood Hunter is allowed at your table, this should be a legal build. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take advantage of a combination that I had not been able to figure out. There's one of the things I've been trying to figure out, or I have in the past tried to figure out, is how to effectively make use of that 6th level ability for the Tempest Cleric. Because, and as I mentioned in my subclass video, the problem with that ability is it really helps us if we can do reliable lightning damage, but because the Tempest Cleric's melee weapons will eventually do thunder damage, it doesn't work together. So I'm going to show you how this build works, and I think you're going to find it's pretty effective. So we have our character here. I'm calling him the Stormlord. This is on D&D Beyond. If you don't normally watch my videos, just so you know, I normally use D&D Beyond for my character builds. Be aware that D&D Beyond has a basic free service, but if you want access to this kind of material, there is a cost involved. So I have turned on the Critical Role content so we can access the Blood Hunter, but we won't need any other content beyond the base rules and the base supplements. Now this is a feat-heavy build, so this is, in other words, a build that is going to require multiple feats. And for that reason, I do think Human is simply going to work better than anything else for us, specifically the Variant Human. So we're going to get a bonus language, and because we are going to be eventually a Priest of Talos, I figure that an elemental language like Primordial might be appropriate. Then we're going to need ability score increases, and we're going to start with increasing our strength score, and then we're going to increase our constitution score. And finally, we're going to get our bonus feat, and this is critical and the reason we're taking the Variant Human. And the one we want to start with is Polearm Master. So Polearm Master does two things for us. The first thing it does is when we take the attack action, and we attack only with a glaive, halberd, quarterstaff, or spear, and we're going to use a spear with this character, you can use a bonus action to make a melee attack with the opposite end of the weapon. This attack uses the same ability modifier as the primary attack. The weapon's damage die for this attack is D4, and it deals bludgeoning damage. So what this means for us is right at level 1, this character will be able to make 2 attacks in their turn. Once we have the extra attack feature, then we'll be able to make 3 attacks a turn. The second thing it does is while you're wielding a glaive, halberd, pike, or quarterstaff, or spear, other creatures provoke an opportunity attack when they enter your reach. This is critical to this particular build. It's not going to come into play as much at lower levels, but at higher levels, this becomes absolutely devastating. The other thing it's going to do for us is at least some of the time, we'll be able to attack twice on our turn, and once when it's not our turn. So potentially up to 3 times in a round, starting at level 1. So when it comes to our starting class, we want to start with Cleric here. And the reason we're going to want to start with Cleric over Blood Hunter is we are going to want to have that proficiency in heavy armor right away. So we're going to choose 2 Cleric skills to start, and I figured we'll choose Insight and Religion. And then our Divine Domain is going to be Tempest. So Tempest, if you remember, is kind of the storm domain. Talos is the god of storms and destruction. And what it's going to do for us right off the bat is it's going to give us proficiency in martial weapons and heavy armor. We're not actually going to really need the proficiency in martial weapons, but the proficiency in heavy armor we do need. The second thing is Wrath of the Storm. At first level, we can thunderously rebuke attackers. When a creature within 5 feet of you that you can see hits you with an attack, you can use your reaction to cause the creature to make a dexterity saving throw. Creature takes 2d8 lightning or thunder damage, your choice, on a failed saving throw, or half as much on a successful one. And we can use this feature a number of times equal to our wisdom modifier, minimum of once, and we regain all expended uses when we finish a long rest. Then we're going to go into our ability scores, and we are going to use a point buy here. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to focus on our strength, because this is going to be a melee character. So we're going to pump our strength right up to 15 with a +1 that gives us a 16 starting strength. The next thing we're going to want is we're going to want a 14 constitution. That means taking 13 with our point buy plus the +1 gives us 14. Then we need to worry about our multi-class requirements, and in order to be a Blood Hunter, we're going to need an intelligence of at least 13. So we're going to do that right now. And then we need a wisdom score of at least 13 to multi-class out of Cleric. We can actually afford a 14 here. That just leaves us with 1 point left, which I guess we might as well put in Dexterity. This low Dexterity score is why we have to have that heavy armor right to start. Then we're going to go into our background, and we'll choose the Acolyte background. We're going to get a couple skill proficiencies. I like Athletics here. This is a strength-based character. And let's take Survival as well. There is some nature aspect to this character. Then we're going to go to Languages. If we're dealing with Talos, we may occasionally be dealing with a demon, so let's grab Abyssal. And then let's grab Elvish as well. That's pretty common. Then we go into our starting equipment. We can begin with a mace or a warhammer if proficient. Well, we'll take the warhammer to start. Then we can start with our chainmail armor. Any simple weapon. Here we go. Now we're going to grab our spear. Then we'll grab an explorer's pack, and we'll get a shield and a holy symbol. We'll have an emblem on the shield. So as I said, we're not going to be using our warhammer. We're going to be using our spear, and that's to take advantage of the Polearm Master feat we took. With the warhammer, we won't get any of the benefits from that feat. The spear gives us all the benefits from that feat. The good thing about using the spear is it's a one-handed weapon, means we can still equip a shield. So going back into Cleric, we need to choose our spells. We're going to get 3 starting cantrips. I like Guidance, and this is a human. Let's grab Light as well, because we cannot see in the dark. And Spare the Dying can be useful for a Cleric as well. So those will be our 3 starting cantrips. Then our first level spells. Remember, this character isn't heavily focused on Wisdom. We've got a decent Wisdom. 14's not bad, but most Clerics would start with a 16 Wisdom. So when I'm picking spells, I'm a little more inclined to take ones that aren't going to require a saving throw. So I think Bless is a good spell for us here. A good use of our concentration, that plus D4 to hit, plus D4 to saves, not just to us, but to 2 other party members as well. I also really like Healing Word here as a bonus action. As opposed to doing our D4 attack, we can bring up a party member that's gone down. And then let's grab a Ritual. We'll grab Detect Magic just to save on spell slots. So at first level, this character is a Cleric, but they're really going to function much more like a fighter. 18 armor class is solid for the level, and with the spear, we have a +5 to hit for d6 +3 damage. On its own, that's not that great, but when we add in the fact that we can make a bonus action attack for d4 +3 damage, then suddenly the offense becomes better than most other classes, unless they also have a similar feat to give them a bonus action attack. But we do have a few spells here as well. Guidance, of course, is always useful to increase our chance of ability checks, but Bless is kind of our primary ability here to get 3 characters with the D4 bonus to attack and saving throws. And we're going to be using that on ourselves as well. So that's a D4 on each of our attacks in the round. And then Healing Word is probably our kind of fallback. We will also have, technically, Fog Cloud and Thunderwave. We get those as domain spells for the Tempest domain. I don't foresee using either of them a lot. Unless I have a bunch of enemies clustered, then I might use a Thunder Wave. But we're not going to stick with Cleric. We're going to come back to Cleric after. The main reason we're going to take the 1 level dip in Cleric to begin with is to get that heavy armor proficiency, which is an absolute requirement right at level 1. We have that 9 dexterity, and we still have an 18 armor class. That would not be the case if we didn't have heavy armor proficiency. So now that we have that dip, we want to get our extra attack. We're only going to get our extra attack by going with Blood Hunter right through level 5. So we're going to do 5 levels in a row here. Now 5 levels of Blood Hunter is good for our hit points because they're using a D10, so that's giving us a few more hit points than Cleric gives us. Then we're going to choose a proficiency. We're going to get proficiency in Alchemist Supplies and 1 additional Blood Hunter skill. So we could choose Acrobatics, Arcana, History, or Investigation. And with this character, let's go ahead and take Investigation. Doesn't really matter what you take there. Then we get our Hunter's Bane. This is a little bit like Favored Enemy, except it applies to Fae, Fiends, and Undead. And it basically helps your Wisdom Survival checks to track them, and Intelligence checks to recall information about them. We also get our Blood Maledict. The Blood Curse we're going to take is the Blood Curse of Exposure. What this is going to do, this is a character that's going to heavily rely on being able to do lightning damage, and Blood Curse of Exposure will ensure our lightning damage can be effective. So when we use it, we can eliminate a creature's resistance to lightning damage. We can even change an invulnerability to lightning damage and reduce it to resistance. But the important things come at 2nd level. So we're going to begin with a fighting style. And we're going to take the dueling fighting style. That's going to increase our damage with our spear by another +2. Then we're going to get our Crimson Rite. And this is very important. We want Rite of the Storm. That's going to give us lightning damage on our weapon. Now at 2nd level, that's a D4 extra damage in lightning, and honestly it doesn't matter. It could be 1 point in lightning damage to make this build work. But when we get to 5th level, it will become a D6 damage. And we can do our Crimson Rite every short rest, and it lasts as long as we're holding the weapon until our next short rest. So we can have our Crimson Rite essentially up pretty much all the time. So that's going to increase our damage with our spear, but more importantly, it's going to add lightning damage to our spear. Then we're going to select our Blood Hunter order. Order of the Ghost Slayer is okay, but it changes your damage type to radiant damage. We actually want to stick with lightning damage. That's not an upgrade for us. Order of the Lycan largely is based on doing unarmed strikes. This isn't an unarmed strike character, and it doesn't work with our Polearm Master. So that's not really a good choice either. So I would go with either Mutant or Profane Soul, and you could go either way. One advantage of Profane Soul is you could grab the Hex spell, which could increase your damage even further with your spear. So I'll be going with Order of the Profane Soul. Order of the Mutant can be okay. Some of the mutagens could work reasonably well with this build. The reason I want to go with Order of the Profane Soul is mainly for the Hex spell. The Bless spell is a good buff, but the Hex spell lasts a lot longer, and it's just going to increase our spear damage. And because we have increased our number of spear attacks through Polearm Master as well as through the extra attack feature, that means more damage with the Hex spell. For the Otherworldly Patron, we're going to take the Great Old One. It really doesn't matter, you can take whatever patron you want. But the Great Old One kind of gives us one additional advantage, and that is whenever we score a critical hit with our spear, remember we're making lots of attacks with it, so critical hits are going to happen. Whenever we make a critical hit with it, creature's frightened of us until the end of our next turn. So that just gives us another way that we can have creatures take disadvantage, affect their movement. So I think Great Old One is the best choice here. Note as well, we'll be able to use our spear because it is going to be our Crimson Rite weapon. We'll be able to use it as a spellcasting focus for our Warlock spells because we're going to get a couple Warlock spells through this subclass. So we'll be able to use our shield as a spellcasting focus for our Cleric spells, our spear as a spellcasting focus for our Warlock spells. And this is really important. So when you get to the ability score improvement, the one we definitely want here is Sentinel. So Sentinel is going to give us 3 things. First, when we hit a creature with an opportunity attack, creature's speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn. Creatures provoke opportunity attacks from you even if they take the disengage action before leaving your reach. And when a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against a target other than you, and that target doesn't have this feat, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against the attacking creature. This is going to work really well with this build once we take a few more levels of Tempest Cleric. So with Profane Soul, the other thing we're going to get that's really important to this build are the spells. Booming Blade is going to be a big deal here because Booming Blade is basically a way we can add thunder damage to our attacks. Now this isn't necessarily something I'm going to be doing with my attack action, but it's something we want on this character. You'll see why. And the other cantrip doesn't nearly matter as much, but you can take whatever you like. Maybe I'll just grab Eldritch Blast so I have a ranged attack, because this character doesn't have a lot of ranged options. Then we get into our first level spell, and we'll grab Hex here. Another spell we're going to grab here is Armor of Agathis, and I'm not going to use my Warlock slots on Armor of Agathis, but as we go up in levels, we're going to be getting more Cleric slots. And because we don't have a Super Wisdom, Armor of Agathis is actually a reasonable way for us to use those slots. And the final option I'll take here is Expeditious Retreat, just in case I need some maneuverability options. So at 6th level, because we have our extra attack now, and because we have Crimson Right, we have a pretty good offense with this character. So base +6 to hit, but remember, if we choose to do a Bless, there will be a +d4 on that. Then our base damage is d6 +5, but we're going to have a bonus 1d6 lightning damage on top of that. And if we're using a Hex, an additional 1d6 necrotic damage on top of that. And that's with 2 attacks a round. And then we can use our bonus action for a 3rd attack in a round, and that'll be just the base d4 damage, but d4 +5, plus potentially 2d6 additional damage. So offensively, pretty strong. Now at range, this guy is weak. Eldritch Blast with this character, using this intelligence score, not good at all. I would be avoiding that. You want melee if you can get it. Armor class is strong, hit points is solid, so overall as a martial character, this character's holding together. But where this character really becomes insanely good is level 11. So we are going to advance in Cleric to level 6. So at 2nd level of Cleric, we're going to get our Channel Divinity Destructive Wrath. What this does is when we roll lightning or thunder damage, we can use our Channel Divinity to deal maximum damage instead of rolling. Now I would never ever do that, you guys probably know this, but never do that with your weapon. You're doing a d6 additional damage. That is not ever worth using your Destructive Wrath for. You want to attach this to a real spell. So if we do an Upcast Shatter or something, then we would use Destructive Wrath, but we're not going to use it on our weapon attacks. Of course, we get our regular Channel Divinity for things like turning undead as well. And then we get an ability score improvement, and what I would take here is the Warcaster feat. So this is going to give us advantage on our Constitution saving throws to maintain concentration. We're going to be concentrating most of the time here. It also allows us to perform the somatic components of spells, even if we're holding a weapon and shield, which we are. And then when a hostile creature's movement provokes an opportunity attack from you, we can use our reaction to cast a spell rather than making an opportunity attack. So this is what we would use our Booming Blade with. So whenever a creature provokes an opportunity attack from us, and that's going to happen all the time. So creatures that enter our range of our weapon provoke an opportunity attack. Creatures that attempt to disengage, the Sentinel prevents that, and they're going to take an opportunity attack. So very easy to get opportunity attacks with this character. Booming Blade allows us to add the thunder damage, the lightning damage, which is kind of thematic for this character. In addition, if a creature was to move after that, they would take additional damage. Now, because of Sentinel, they're probably not going to take the secondary damage because we're reducing their speed to 0. But reducing their speed to 0 is better than taking the additional damage, and I'm going to go over that. But the main thing here is Thunderbolt Strike. At 6th level, when you deal lightning damage to a large or smaller creature, you can also push it up to 10 feet away from you. I have been searching for a way to make this work, and Bloodhunter is the way to do it. So let's grab our spells, and then I'm going to show you guys how this build works. So we're going to get one more cantrip, doesn't matter what you pick, I'll go ahead and take Mending. Then we're going to get 5 additional prepared spells. And the ones I'd take here are Aid. It does not suffer from us not having a super high wisdom score, and it's a really good spell. It also stacks with Armor of Agathis, because Aid is increasing your maximum hit points, while Armor of Agathis is giving you temporary hit points. We're going to grab Lesser Restoration. It's just one of those spells that sometimes you really need it, and it's nice to have when you need it. We'll also grab the Silence spell. This can be a useful spell to deal with other spellcasters, because if you move up to them, you can prevent them from casting. And because we can change their speed to 0 quite often, we can often prevent them from getting out of the silence effect. One spell we're not going to take with this character that I would normally take with a cleric is Spiritual Weapon, because we already have something to do with our bonus action. Then we're going to take a couple 3rd level spells. The spells I'm going to take is Spirit Guardians and Revivify. So the way this works is, generally in combat, we're going to keep up our Spirit Guardians. That's going to do some regular damage. Then we have extra attack plus a regular attack with 1d6 plus 5 damage plus a d6 lightning damage. So decent damage and over 3 different attacks in a round. Not bad at all. But the key to this build is Thunderbolt Strike. When you deal lightning damage to a large or smaller creature, you can push it up to 10 feet away from you. That's what this is all about. Because remember, if a creature moves within range of our weapon, we get an opportunity attack. When we take an opportunity attack, that opportunity attack is going to deal lightning damage because of the spear doing additional lightning damage. And with an opportunity attack, we can do a Booming Blade to add a bit of damage. But the main thing is we are going to hit the creature. It's going to take the d6 plus 5 damage, plus d6 lightning, plus d8 thunder, and it's going to get pushed away. Pushed away by 10 feet, and then its speed is reduced to 0 for the rest of its turn. So quite simply how this works is, you got your enemy, and they move in towards you, and as they come into range to strike you, they provoke an opportunity attack. So you take your opportunity attack, and then it deals lightning damage in addition to other damage to them. And because it deals lightning damage, we can now push them 10 feet away from us. And in addition to being pushed 10 feet away, now their speed is reduced to 0. So if they don't have a range attack, they're done. Next round, they try to come in again. Opportunity attack, you push them away, their speed is reduced to 0. And it's not like we're stuck on our turn either. We can simply move up to them and attack them. And once we attack them, we push them 10 feet away from us. So on their turn, if they attempt to close, once again they provoke the opportunity attack and are pushed 10 feet away, and their speed becomes 0. And so what happens is unless we miss our opportunity attack, or unless they have some kind of range or reach weapon, they can't attack at all. We're going to be the only one attacking, the only one doing damage. We've completely locked down this enemy. Now if we want to push a creature a very long distance, we can move up, and then we can hit them and push them, and then we can move up again and hit them and push them again, and potentially up to 3 times on our turn. So the thing I really like about this character is, in addition to it being a pretty strong martial character, but its lockdown ability is unmatched. So that's how I would combine Cleric and Bloodhunter to make a pretty effective melee build, I think, and an extremely effective lockdown build. So I hope you enjoyed this build. If I was to continue this build beyond 11th level, people are going to ask me, I would continue with Cleric. It's going to increase our melee weapon damage and give us higher spell slots. We can upcast our Spirit Guardians, that kind of thing. So that's the way I would go with it. But I do think 11th level is where this build comes together and becomes something unique. So next week, I'm going to be coming back with straight out Cleric videos. So until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. Because D&D is for everyone. Thanks, Optimancers, and I'll talk to you next week.